What is going on, everybody? It is Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and I am here with Daily Damage. Love hanging out with everybody. This is our daily, at least on weekdays, we try to do a daily vlog, live stream on Facebook, and then put it on YouTube. It's awesome to have conversations with everybody, and I always start Daily Damage with the rundown. The rundown is essentially the things that we think, hey, check this out this week, or here's what's going on, and you can always, check those things out. And usually I try to put them in the comments below, in the comment section of the video or in the description. But today's rundown is going to be a little different. The rundown for today is a hurricane update. So there's a hurricane headed toward Florida. James and I are in Central Florida. We're about 30 minutes outside of Orlando. So right now, that means that we're going to know a lot more about this hurricane tomorrow. And this is unfortunate because it's kind of like a hurry up and wait game. From what I understand, the hurricane is going over the Bahamas as we speak. And it is, if I'm not mistaken, it's still a Category 4. There are only 5. So a Category 4 hurricane is essentially a certain wind speed. And the hurricane scale is pretty interesting because it could be the equivalent of a Category 8, but there's no such number. It only goes up to 5. So it's like this many mile-an-hour winds plus. It's pretty wild. So that is sort of the rundown. We'll keep everybody posted as far as, that goes. But right now, we seem relatively safe. We are not on the coast. The coast is being evacuated, I think, today or tomorrow. And so we expect the hurricane to make landfall. I think it's going to be early Friday morning. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of awesome people here today. Let's check the chat. It's Hurricane Stone Rift. It's Hurricane Matthew. Matthew Click from A Fistful of Dice. What's up? Matt Click is actually here. Spencer Shields is here. Rob Coletta is here. Matthew Knapp is here. Drake Warren. People are racing the comments. Steven says first. Dirk says second. Rob Coletta says third. Josh Glisson says, get off my lawn. Stephen Back says, batten down the hatches and go indoors, Tim. Run. So interesting thing about hurricanes is that it's mostly the wind that is going to really be the dangerous part. And that might seem obvious to some, but a lot of people think it's just a really bad thunderstorm. It's really the winds and the flooding that you have to be worried about. The first world problem that we usually have to deal with is power outages, cell outages, and internet outages. So when a hurricane comes blowing through here, most of the time, the newer homes are up to code, and we kind of hunker down, and we're okay. Older homes that aren't to code, or mobile homes can literally blow away. But older homes, one of the bigger issues is the roof. I don't know why I said it like that. The roof. The roofs, maybe that's why I was going to say roofs. The roofs aren't tethered to the structure of the foundation and the I don't know construction words. The roof isn't tethered to the home, and so the roof rips off is a problem. Now, here's the thing. We've had hurricanes in the last 7 years, so most of those roofs have been rebuilt. Anyway, we're safe as of now. We'll keep everybody posted. I was going to say one other thing. You should totally subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I noticed that a lot of people, we can look at YouTube analytics and stuff like that. A lot of the people who come from Facebook, it's as far as what YouTube analytics is showing, aren't always subscribed. So down here in the corner, right down here, hit the subscribe button so you can, if you miss a Daily Damage, we try to put them on YouTube so you can watch them. And the next day at about 8 a.m., they pop up in your stream so you can catch up. But yeah, check it out. Subscribe. But we had a question from someone named Circo. And Circo has been in a couple of these chats, and he said, hey, Tim, I really want to get my kids into RPGs. How would you suggest doing that? And before I go into that, I want to check the chat. Rob Coletta says, Tim, the Lord of the Storms. Steven says, no, I already read those. Again, I'm a bad streamer. Not a great vlogger. Alexander, hello. What's going on, man? Josh says that he was stationed in Louisiana during Rita and Katrina. That's rough, dude. Drake Warren, Stormlord's Thunder. What's up, Spencer? Andre Martinez is here. Michael Barker is here. Dirk Van Claveren says, I've never used third-party modules or settings before. Another player invited me to the Midgard setting of Cobalt Press, and I'm so incredibly invested than I am for Galorion and D&D official settings for some reason. Almost as much as Warcraft. I'm definitely going to check out Dragongrin now. Awesome. I'm a huge fan of Cobalt Press, and I'm just learning about them. What really kind of introduced me to them was their... Oh, I'm going to forget what it's called. It's a series of... I'm trying to remember what it is. It's basically how to build a campaign setting, and it's a series of essays about the important things to do and not to do. And I read that entire thing before we started work on our campaign setting, and it's really good. And if anybody can post that down here in the chat, that would be awesome, because I really love it. Dragon Eggs Benedict says, good afternoon. What's up? Circo, what's up, man? I'm going to answer your question today. Alexander has a question. He says, what do you think? When is the right time for kids to start playing? I'm going to kick it off by saying this. Here is the secret. This is the secret. The secret is that kids are playing tabletop RPGs before we ever try to teach them tabletop RPGs. I'm going to give you an example that Barker from Be a Better Game Master shared with me. That just, pew. He was saying that the tabletop RPGs that we play is just taking the pretend that we play when we're kids and adding some rules to them. And I thought, that is exactly right. And so it's taking it from the, playing tag in the yard and I'm the Red Ranger, or, these kids these days, whatever they're into. But it's pretending, and then what a tabletop RPG does is it gives a structure so that when it's, no, I beat you, no, I beat you, no, I beat you, there's a rule system that adjudicates who beats who, etc. So, I think the age to start introducing kids to RPGs is the age at which they start imagining and pretending. I don't think that it has to be a formal rule set, sit down, make your character. I think a really good way, a solid way to introduce your kids to RPGs is that you don't have to sit them down and tell them you're introducing them to RPGs. You can just say, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if... Oh, let's pretend you're... And then pick anyone. Let's pretend you're... And even at a younger age, let's pretend you're Handy Manny. Handy Manny. Let's pretend you're Handy Manny. Or let's pretend you're Daniel Tiger. You have to get ready for school, but you can't reach your toothbrush. What do you do? And I know that sounds silly, but it's about engaging their imagination, and it's about telling a story collaboratively first, with no dice or paper or character sheets around. So to me, when can you start teaching kids RPGs? I think they're playing RPGs before we ever try to teach them. They're playing pretend. They're telling stories. It's part of our inherent nature, I think, as people to tell stories. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that the focus should be something they already know and can draw from and extrapolate from. So this really comes into play when you try to decide what you're going to do. I know you want to push your 500,000 word fantasy novel onto your 8-year-old. I know. Listen, we all want people to read our stuff. No, I'm kidding. The point is, I wouldn't smash my homebrew world that they have to think about and read and all that stuff onto somebody who's just getting into RPGs if they're a kid. What I would do instead is I would draw from a show or a movie or a book that they currently already like and know the lore for. I think that that's going to be a far easier access point that I can draw immediate frames of reference to. So like, for instance, my daughter, she's 2, but she loves Jake and the Neverland Pirates. I would probably start there for me. And now I wouldn't start with her being 2, but if they were old enough, you'd say, okay, great. All right, who wants to play Jake? All right, who wants to play a kid with a map? I don't know his name. Bucky? No, that's the ship. Anyway, the point is, I'd say, all right, now Captain Hook comes along and he says, no, I can't. I can do a better Captain Hook. You popinjays! That was a 4 out of 7. But the idea is that I would then say, you know, give me your map. I'm not even going to keep trying to do it. You popinjays! And then I'd say, what do you say? And let them respond back. And then, because they know the world, because they know Jake and the Neverland Pirates, and they kind of understand it, they'd say, we want to go to our ship. We want to go to Bucky. Okay, great. So they know the world, the setting. All right, so you run to Bucky. Okay, use your pixie dust. And it's like all narrative. That's how I would probably start. All narrative, all let's pretend, all, you know, let's talk it out, let's tell a story. And I'd probably use a world from a TV show, a cartoon, or something that they're already familiar with. So that would be step 1. Let's look here at the chat. Alexander says, oh, nope, Timothy Waters. Made it. Got it. Made it, but got to get back soon. I say for kids, tone it down a notch for death and such, but tone it down for story and role play. But don't tone down story and role play. Ethan Hall says, do you think there's a particular system, less crunchy or even diceless system, best for young kids to learn and play? There are a few that I've never tried. I know that there's Hero Kids. There's another one. Oh, it's called like Go Away Scary Monsters or something like that. Like I said, I think to gauge interest and to kind of get a feel for what their style would be before you introduce a system to them, I would think start telling the stories. Start kind of narratively doing that. I know Nate Vanderzee from WASD 20 plays Hero Kids with his children, and he said it's a great system and he loves it and that it works really well for them. So I trust his recommendation. So though I never played it myself, I'd throw that out there. Dirk Van Claveren says, this is what I tell everybody too. When people ask when I started role-playing, I don't have any answers because my play and pretend flowed into role-play. So I don't know. Yeah, man. Like I said, Barker nailed it. The thing that makes an RPG is just introducing some sort of framework to adjudicate the challenges. Really, that's all it is. Timothy has to go, man. See you later. Dragon Eggs Benedict says, I ran across this revelation that my daughter would love to play D&D with me. When I explained what I was doing when I was playing D&D to her, she was all like, oh, so that's what I all the time, but what I get to do is this. Can you rephrase that? So that's what I do. Is this what you mean? Is that what I do all the time, but I get to roll this, and holds up the D20? That's exactly right. Totally. Circo says guilty. Guilty of what? Which part? Dirk Van Claveren says, makes me kind of nervous about disagreeing what is or isn't possible. Alexander Kostick. My son, who's 3, shows great interest in strange-looking dice and miniatures. He sees the difference between small and big numbers, like 1 through 9 or 10 through 20. What I do is set some evil monsters, and we're defining them is where we roll between a 10 and a 20. Basically, that's a simple rule. And it works great. No need for classes or something else that I would overcomplicate it for them. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to do it. Is just, yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate it or try to come up with a system on the fly, but there are a few systems that use 1 die. Like there's a D4 system floating around where essentially roll a D4. If you get a 1, you don't do so great. If you roll a 2, you do better. You roll a 3, you're doing great, and you roll a 4, it's like, wow. To me, if I was going to introduce dice, I would probably take 1 die, a D6, and that's what I'd say. It wouldn't be math or number crunching, though that's awesome. What I would do is I'd say, all right, now let's roll to see sort of how we do. And that would be more of the narrative direction. If it was a 1, it was sort of more like a narrative like, oh no, this kind of goes wrong. What do you do next? If it's a 6, it's great success. So I probably wouldn't tie it into math just yet if they were younger, but they would start to understand the principles. When I roll low, it's not great. When I roll high, it's great. And that would at least give them an idea for when I start introducing dice later. Circle wants to know, hey, anybody hear anything about Hero Kids? I'd love to know that too. Nathan Crouch, stay safe during the storm, Tim. I live on the east coast of Florida. This weekend will be interesting to say the least. Dude, you stay safe, Nathan. Are they evacuating you guys yet? I heard my mother-in-law lives in Melbourne and North Australia, Florida. My accents are terrible today. The thing that I heard was that they're evacuating tonight, but they're sort of waiting to see which direction it takes. But so, oh, cool. Dragon X Benedict says, I used the Poke Park from the Wii game as a setting for my daughter, and we just started rolling a few months ago. Her math scores went through the roof. She can now add so much faster than anyone in her class. When her teacher asked me what I was doing to improve the score so much, I had tears in my eyes. That's brilliant. So let's kind of move on to that. There are a couple other things that I want to mention. So I think that adding math, and I made a couple of notes here, it's a really good opportunity. Role-playing games are a really good opportunity to teach in general. So math, general math, like you're talking about, if you work in like traps that are like spelling puzzles, or like puzzles where they have to spell things, or puzzles where they have to do addition and subtraction, their character is figuring it out in game, but they are figuring it out. As we all know, puzzles are one of the few things that most people handle out of game, with some caveats. But that's a clever way, math and just simple spelling stuff, or, if you can sneak some other stuff in there, like word definitions and stuff like that, that's a clever thing to do as well. And if you wrap it in a wonderful, fun adventure, they're going to remember it. So I think that's fantastic. Rob Coletta says, I think a mistake that many people make is talking down or oversimplifying things for kids. Kids are a smart audience. If you tell them a compelling story, everything else will fall into place. I fully concur with you, Rob. I think you should always talk up to children, I think. And I think by doing it that way, you're going to teach them. This also brings in the fact that role-playing and talking and critical thinking and, teaching them about things maybe you want to teach them about in real life. Now, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, but, if there are certain situations, like just throwing this out there. Let's say one of the characters in the game gets pushed or, et cetera, and you want to try to teach your child, like, when it's okay to respond in one way or another way. Now, that gets shaky because I know some people don't want to mix the RPG with real life, but I've seen some parents sort of do this thing, and they didn't even know they were doing it. They weren't role players, but they would do, it was actually kind of weird watching them do it because they were role playing without knowing they were role playing. But the mom and the dad would act things out, like, and then have the kid say, well, what would you do in this situation? And it was interesting because the kid was engaged. So I don't know, maybe there's an element of that in there. But I agree, Rob. They're smarter than sometimes we give them credit for. Alexander says, I meant defeating, not defining. Spencer Shields, my 3-year-old is already very theatrical and crazy creative. I really look forward to seeing if he's going to be interested in RPGs. He loves watching my group play and always wants my dice. Totally understand that. And I think, here's another thing. Listen, dice there is a choking hazard there. I'll tell you that. So if you're going to have certain younger kids play with make sure play with dice. I've been messed up on die and dice ever since the second video of our D&D basics. But if you're going to have kids play with them, just make sure you're watching them and keeping an eye on them. I just know my daughter, and I'm just telling you that from experience. Here's another thing. You have an opportunity to use props. Print up maps. Use little knickknacks as lost idols. Use tactile elements. Kids like stuff that they can hold and feel, and get one of those big keys from like Hobby Lobby or like Pottery Barn. It's like $1, one of those big wooden keys, and throw that in there. I think having the kids engage and be visual is also really helpful. Theater of the mind is a blast. Doing it all in our minds, amazing. In addition, I think that another thing we can do is just set up the table with toys and things from around the house and like raid their toy chest and, say, hey, pick a guy you want to be. And, have them move their characters and sort of have them play in this environment on the dining room table or, on the patio or anything like that. So tactile, prop kind of stuff always plays well with kids too. Harry joined. What's up, man? Circo says math traps. Effing brilliant. Dragon X Benedict. I can't believe I didn't think of using traps and puzzles to teach her stuff. Excellent idea, Tim. Thank you. You're welcome. Absolutely. Nathan, in response to whether they're going to evacuate him, says, not yet. He heard they might evacuate barrier islands, but I haven't seen that happen around his area. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out, man. Be safe. You be safe. I somewhat agree with Rob. In my opinion, the story should be simpler. You should let the children add the complicated stuff by asking them questions. Why do you think this hero doesn't like the big fat goblin? And then work together on the answer. Make them learn how to think. Exactly. I think RPGs excel at critical thinking mixed with creativity. Sometimes it's tough to add those two things together. And if you can foster an environment where both of those things work well, I think it makes us as people more creative, critical thinkers, if that makes sense. Which I think is a huge skill to have, to be able to think on your feet but also be creative and not think inside the box. That's brilliant. Rob Coletta says, imagine a D&D game that is an extension of a bedtime story, a small encounter that tells a tale and teaches a moral lesson. That's great. In fact, here's something I hadn't even thought of, but I was just inspired by your comment, Rob. Grab characters from some of their favorite bedtime stories. My daughter loves this, it's called Goodnight Gorilla. And there's a zookeeper that essentially, I don't want to spoil it for you, there's a zookeeper that essentially thinks he's locking all the cages of the animals, but this gorilla stole his keys and is systematically letting all the animals out. They then go and sleep in the zookeeper's bedroom. But playing out that scenario immediately could be fun. Like, hey, you want to play Goodnight Gorilla? And you can even flip through the book and say, oh, look, the monkey's taking his keys. What do you do? And just tell a story. Tell a different story. The illustrations are there. All that stuff's there. So, I don't know. I think that could be interesting. That brings up this point. There are absolutely no rules. There really aren't. And it's about having fun, making a connection with whatever kid you're playing with. I think a lot of people are gonna game master for their children. But if you're game mastering for other children, just being able to tell a story, kind of take their pulse, read the group, and have a blast. That's really rule -1. Here's another. Well, let me check out the chat here. Dragon X Benedict said, I use my Be a Better Campaign Master Part 1 to construct my PokePark game, and my daughter helped me decide what goes where. Super fun and gave me great insight into what she wanted in a campaign. That's actually brilliant, and that was gonna be the next thing that I was gonna mention. I love what you're saying. To me, get their opinion. So often, listen, we're creators. We love to invent. We love to entertain and present our ideas to a group. That's why we're dungeon masters. But get their opinion. Get their buy-in. Don't try to guess what your kid will like. Even if you have a good idea, there's nothing wrong with asking them, hey, what do you like the most? So if you... As adults, we get wrapped up in what we would like, and I know that I'm guilty of this sometime for my child, but, and there's a level where it's like, listen, you're still the adult, and you decide what you're going to play, and how it's going to be played, and for how long, and all that stuff, but you don't ask, like, how do I want to word this? Just ask them, hey, what did you like most about that game? And don't feel like, well, I've got to mix it up. It's got to have some role play and some intrigue. And it's like, if all they want to do is combat, then just do combat for a while. Just make sure that it caters to them, because really the key at this point isn't a well-balanced game. It's going to be a game that is all fun and all memories. That's really what I think the important thing is. Let's check the chat here. So... All right, so I think we're caught up in the chat. There's going to be one final thing, and this is a huge, huge, huge one. Take breaks. Take breaks. Either make the games short and manageable, or take breaks. Don't forget that the attention span of a kid is going to vary from child to child. So also get a range. Well, get a gauge is really the word I was looking for. Try to gauge the group you're playing with. If you know, okay, little Tommy, he'll pay attention for like 15 minutes. But little Johnny will pay attention for like 25 minutes. To me, the best thing to do is take a short break after 15 minutes, have everybody get up, stretch, eat a snack, use the bathroom, and then say, okay, let's hurry up, let's come back and wrap it up, and then play for like another 7-10 minutes. Now, if I'm running the game, you know I always talk too much. I DM games for my 2-year-old daughter that are like 4.5, hours, and it's great. But she's a min-maxer, and we all know that. She reads the monster manual, and so I try to change it up. I'm like, oh, it looks like a beholder. Ha! I'm just kidding. So, also don't be afraid to take a break if things start getting a little more stale than you realize. Like if it's like 10 minutes in, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? Why don't we get a juice? Let's get some drinks, and I want to ask you guys a question. And then you kick in the door, quote unquote. What do you do when the orcs kick down the door? All right, hurry up, let's get your drink and let's talk about it. And it's like, you can have them sort of invest themselves into, let's go get a drink. Okay, orcs broke in the door, what's happening? And you kind of have them stand up, and they get a little, kinetic energy going. All right, now sit down at the table. I also recommend getting these kids all sugared up and then giving them back to their parents. It's the code of the road, man. That's what happens. It's what everyone does to me, and that's what I'm going to do to your kids. I'm kidding. But that would be it, man. That would kind of be my baseline. If you want to see an example of us running a game, I ran a game on our channel. I think it says D&D for Kids is the video title. I'll put it in the description. And it's a short game. I want to say it's like 2 hours. But they're slightly older kids. They're like tweens into almost teenagers. So you're going to see that they also get a little more like gory. I kept it to where it was bugs they were fighting, so all the gore was like green. I keep that stuff. There's going to be different levels of what you're comfortable with, but I just try to keep it cartoonish in violence. I'm not trying to deal with like the themes of taking a life and all that stuff. It's more like, you can also do, he's knocked out. It doesn't have to be death. It doesn't have to be murder. These kids were a little older, and they were sort of seasoned RPG players. Their dad, Ben Dunster, plays RPGs with them. So they were like doing all kinds of combat moves and all kinds of cool stuff. But that's one trick, is keep the blood to, ichor of a bug, or make them like sort of alien creatures where the blood is blue. And if you include blood at all, like I said, knocking them unconscious is always a good way to do it if you're playing with younger kids. That's if there's combat at all. You can have an absolute blast in a tabletop RPG, and if it's something that wouldn't be medieval fantasy, it could be a race that they're using, like narrative race or skill challenges and things like that, so that they can still have a contest and feel like they've accomplished a goal, but no one had to get punched or kicked or whatever. So don't also think that you have to include combat in your tabletop RPGs, depending on what your flavor is. You can also run a modern game. One of the things I've seen is there are at least a couple mods for like modern D&D. So depending on if you're doing the rules light thing I suggested before, you can even have them be themselves, which can be pretty cool. Like, all right, guys, aliens are hovering over the house. What do we do? What do we do? And you're the dungeon master, but you're also the dad, and you get to play. Okay, all right, well, I run upstairs and I get my bat, and they're playing in the real world, but you're drawing from the real environment. And if you want to go even crazy with it, like if you really want to go like LARPing style, you can actually run around your house and have a die and just roll it on the surface. Oh, the monster gets me, or whatever. It's about having fun. It's about teaching them that it's storytelling. It's telling a story collaboratively. It's about being imaginative, and yeah. Sean DeGaiso joined. What's up, man? Circo says, helping my kids discover and build their creativity and storytelling skills is awesome, but the connection I'm hoping we'll share is what's most important to me. I can't wait. Yeah, man, I think the connection will sort of be natural. And that's the key to getting their opinion and making sure it's something they're interested in, because you can also role play sports. You could role play them, being a star quarterback or playing baseball or whatever. So it doesn't have to be fantasy D&D based. It could be something that they would also be interested in real life if they're more into sports and stuff like that. Alexander Kostic says, I think also the children should lose sometimes. That is very important for healthy and critical thinking afterward. When I was a kid, my grandpa kicked my ass in chess. And when I finally learned how to play and finally won the game, I was beyond happy. This taught me how to be fair as a player and respect everyone I play with. That's a really good point. It's going to sound counterintuitive or like I'm being mean, but yeah, I agree with him. Don't patty cake them all the time. They should learn, that there is losing and losing gracefully and how to respond and so on. So I totally agree with that. I think that that's a really good point. Ethan Hall adds to that and says, in addition, they could learn about, group work by playing in groups and learning about letting others taking their turns and having a time to shine. He says, I imagine this would easily go from the game mechanic to a life lesson. That's actually a really good point. Letting others speak, listening critically, letting other people have a chance, helping other people succeed when it's your turn. That's great stuff, man. Very good. Alexander Kostic. Nobody mentioned Rory story cubes. These are amazing tools for empowering storytelling experience. If you haven't got some already, I highly suggest you get them. Rory story cubes are dice that have pictures or images on each of the on the sides. So you roll them and then improv based on the pictures. So there'll be these little icons of like, a sword or a brain or, just different things. So yeah, I would say Rory story cubes are a great way to have a great improv session. Circo says, thank you so much for covering this, man. Absolutely. I think a lot of people have this question. I think a lot of people have asked us in different forums over the years, this question. And so I think this is kind of a good way to get it, share it on a live stream, and then throw it on the YouTube channel so that it can kind of be up there. And yeah, I think it's going to help a lot of people, mostly because you folks here in the comments are brilliant. And so you're helping me along and you have a lot of great ideas. That helps a lot. Ethan says, I've heard White Van say free candy work, but I wouldn't try it. Most of the time. No windows. Can't have windows on a kidnapper van. Matthew Knapp says, I love reading Choose Your Own Adventures. Sometimes it may be a good idea to give them an A or B choice. Actually, that's not a bad idea at all. In fact, maybe, go on eBay and grab some Choose Your Own Adventures. Could be an awesome opportunity to kind of flip through and have a pre-made adventure. In fact, I don't know, I'm making this up on the spot, but what you can do is if you, have them choose one way and then it ends in failure, you can have them roll to succeed, or that's where the dice can come into play and so on. I don't know, just spitballing. So, I'm going to end the stream with this. This is all things that we were talking about of how we can do things and what we can do to help kids understand and play role-playing games. Here's what I want to end with. Here is what we need to learn. This is what we need to learn from the kids. And it's that they're fearless in their creativity. And I think that we need to adopt this. I don't know when it happens. I'm not sure when the creative sense of wonder leaves or when the feeling that someone else is going to dislike what I'm making up creeps into my mind, creeps into our minds. But, I have this person out there. They're absolutely fictional. They're a fable. I call them my invisible critic. And my invisible critic hates everything that I write. And they critique and they judge. And in my own mind, I'm like, that's a stupid name. No. My invisible critic. Because you're thinking, oh, people aren't going to like this. But who are you imagining? You're imagining your invisible critic. So, my point is, be like children. Ditch the invisible critic. Be fearless in your creativity. And I think, if nothing else, you're going to learn some stuff running a game for kids because they're going to surprise you with how freeform and fearless and just, I think, inspiring they really are. So that would be my final thought. So thanks for tuning in. This has been awesome. It was great. thank you all. This has been Daily Damage. Be sure to keep being awesome. That's it. Until next time, may your dice roll high.